let's talk about your approach to your writing because I think because it's humor, it makes it feel light even when you're talking about something heavy and real. And it's very authentic and raw, very vulnerable, right? So tell me about that approach. Did it come naturally? Is it something that you enjoy doing? And how does that creative layer help you, I guess, cope or heal?
For me, humor has always come naturally, in particular, dark humor. I'm the kind of person where, my sister and I, if we're sitting at a funeral for a family member, we're going to make some joke and start laughing in the middle of tears. And I think that some people may look at that and say, oh, how rude. But I think it's just the opposite. I think it's all about celebrating joy whenever you possibly can. There's also something really wonderful about if you can laugh at something scary or dark, it makes it smaller. It shrinks that monster, and it also creates sort of an on ramp where people feel more comfortable talking to you about it and asking about
Yeah.
it, and then they can laugh about their own issues, and then just all of us together can see the ridiculousness of life, but also the joy of life. And it's not always happy and fun. I do have some dark stuff in there, but I think anytime you can take the opportunity to laugh and to say something funny or unexpected, and my humor is very odd, I would say. And so people either they come in and they're like, this is amazing. I've had so many people who have said, I was laughing so hard on a plane that that people thought I was crying. And people were like, do you need a drink? Do you need help? And they were like, this is the greatest thing ever. This is wonderful.
I love that. That's a magic, it's a superpower that you have. Do you have, I guess, tips or advice for other people? Everyone's dealing with some sort of struggle, right? Whether it's mental illness, mental health, or just life in general. What advice do you have for them to take that other perspective, to see their life from a lighter, like to be able to laugh at things and not take life so seriously?
You know what? I think it's work. I'd like to say, oh, just do it, just laugh. But I think that you do have to keep that perspective of the world it may look like a cold place, or the problems that you're going through may seem incredibly dark, and the future can be so scary. But laughter is a radical act of love that you give to yourself. And so, doing things that bring you joy, that make you laugh, that drive you forward, that give you energy and excitement, whatever they are, you should never feel guilty about doing those things and bringing those things into your life. And I think so often we do go, oh, well, the world is dark, or people are suffering, and this is and all that is true, and we still need to focus on that and do our best. But that doesn't mean that we should stop with joy, because that's the whole point of life. So
Mhm.
anytime you have the opportunity to talk to a friend, or to laugh, or to make a joke, or for me, art is a big thing. And I used to struggle with the fact that I would think I'm wasting my time because I'm doing these things that I enjoy. And that's so ridiculous, because time enjoyed is never time wasted. That's the whole reason that we're supposed to be here. And I think we often forget that. One of the things that has been really helpful to me is I will think about my own child. I think about, what do I want for them in life? What if they were in this exact same position? What would I want? And every time I'm like, I just want them to be happy. That's what I really want. And so why wouldn't we do the same thing for ourselves? Why wouldn't we
Yeah.
take care of ourselves the same way that we would even a pet? With a pet, we're like, you know what? I think you need a nap. I think you need a treat. I think
Yeah.
you need a snuggle. And why wouldn't we treat ourselves as well as we treat the dog, you know?
I totally agree with you. It's like time with joy is never wasted. And it also reminds me that, you know, how some people, I think they categorize some experiences as, oh, this is a serious place. This is a serious topic, right? There's no joy related to like serious things in life, but you're saying joy can be everywhere, even in the dark, even in death, even in like sickness, like everywhere. There could be
Exactly.
something where you can bring joy there. I love that perspective.
Exactly. You know, my during COVID, my grandmother died of COVID, and it was so sad. But at the same time, all this ridiculousness happened where because COVID was it was so insane, and you know you couldn't go up to the hospital. This was before the people were vaccinated, before we
Mhm.
really knew anything, and the doctor called and they were like, "I'm so sorry, she's passed," and we were really sad, and she was so stubborn. And so I told my mom, I was like, "Are you sure though? She's probably just faking it." Because that seems like something she would do. She's probably like, "I just want some time alone." And then my mom called me back like 30 minutes later and she was like, "Well, she's still alive." I'm like, "How? How is she still alive?" She's like, "I guess they confused her with someone else." And so I was like, "Okay." And then she called an hour later. She was like, "She's dead again."
Oh my goodness.
It was so sad, but also it was such a relief to be able to laugh and to say, this is exactly the story that Granny would have wanted. This is exactly the way that she would have wanted to be like, I was a zombie, I'm keeping you guessing. And so instead of just mourning, which of course we did, having that ability to laugh and to keep bringing that joke up and to make these silly jokes that she would have loved too was
Mhm.
such a gift. And instead of thinking about that time with only, ow, how hard that was, instead, my first thought is of my mom calling back and saying, she's dead again. And me going, oh, that is so Granny. So giving yourself permission to laugh
Yeah.
at those things. But I will say, the thing that I think sometimes people get wrong is sometimes people try to find humor in things that aren't theirs. And that I think can be something else where it's like, oh, I heard your grandma died. Let me tell you a joke about that. You
Oh,
should
yeah,
wait.
no. Yeah, yeah. Not appropriate.
Exactly. Now, if they come up with a joke, then you can, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think in that way, that's why it's humor works if you're talking about yourself and if there's like an element of truth to it. Like if it's not true at all, it just doesn't work and it feels rude. I don't know. There's so many layers. That's why it's not everyone is good at this.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so Jenny, I want to ask you about your success with your books because I remember reading somewhere that you have a lot of best-selling books. You want like basically you've mentioned being surprised. Like, oh, this book it happened to be a bestseller. I had no idea that it would go that far. Like just the tone that you talk about your success is kind of it makes it feel so effortless. And I wonder how do you approach your creative projects? Like do you go in with expectations or do you truly like let go of the outcome?
So, my first book, I started working on the day that I turned 30 because I felt like I'm 30 years old. At that point, wasn't a mother. I felt like, I'd accomplished some things, but I wasn't really in my life. I hadn't hit those goals that I thought that I would hit. And I thought, writing a book was one of the things that I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do it to publish it. I wanted to write basically a book of all of the stories that I was afraid I might forget that I wanted to one day tell my kids if I ever had any. And so I started writing this book thinking at least this is something that I can sort of move forward on. And I worked on it for so long with so many and years of previous work that I pulled out and thought, let's do this and let's do that. And so when my first book came out, which is called Let's Pretend This Never Happened, a mostly true memoir, um, it was a number one New York Times bestseller overnight. And I always say I was an overnight success, and it only took me 11 years to get there because it took me so long to write this book. Whereas I have friends who they'll get on an airplane, and by the time the airplane lands, they're like, I wrote 2 more books.
Oh my
And
god.
for me, 5 years is not really long enough for me to write a book. So there's a lot of time in between each one of my books. And every time I think two things. One, I think I've waited too long. People are going to forget who I am. And then the other thing, because I deal a lot with imposter syndrome. And so I constantly, I second guess everything that I write. I struggle with paralysis where I'm just like, if I don't write anything, then I can't write anything wrong. I deal a lot with the fact that I feel like they're going to figure out that I'm not really funny or I'm not really interesting. And they'll be like, why? Why did we buy all these books before? And I thought, well, you know what? I bet the cure for imposter syndrome is just to like be really good at something. Cause then you're going to teach your brain, oh, look, I've written 4 New York Times bestsellers. Clearly I can do this. But the problem with imposter syndrome is that it doesn't work that way. And so instead, every time one of my books would hit the bestseller list, I would have this weird cognitive dissonance of, are you sure? Like, I don't follow the rules. I don't write things the right way. Editors who look at it, they have to drink a lot. I have these rambling parentheticals. I just go off on weird tangents. I have footnotes that go to nothing, and so I always think, well, this is proof that I don't know what I'm doing. But what I have learned is that people want to meet you where you are. You're probably further along than you think you are, and you're probably better than you think you are. If you're walking around and you're like, oh my God, I'm so amazing, everybody else is awful, you don't have imposter syndrome, and you might not be right. But if you're walking around and you're like, I don't understand how I'm successful at this one thing, you probably do. And what you need to do is try to embrace that and remind yourself that no one can do the thing that you're doing exactly like you are doing it.